This is a stitched-together compilation of TikToks explaining why some believe the U.S. is heading toward collapse. I don't own these clips. This is purely for educational and awareness purposes.
So you know how Trump announced that all of these countries had reached out and were actually kissing his ass, as he said, about negotiating these tariff deals? Well, it turns out no one is actually reaching out to make any deals. Why do we know this? Because the Treasury Secretary Brissett today said that they are willing to give favored, there's some term he used, I'm gonna paraphrase it, but basically favored status for people first come, first serves. They'll get better deals. Now, you don't do that unless no one's coming to the table, because why, if there was this avalanche of people wanting to make deals, why would you have to offer special deals for the people who come in first? His tariff gambit didn't work. China is pretty much happy with, they're like, let's do this because it works for them, because they can reach out to other countries and make different deals, and also they're dictators, so they don't have to worry about any alliances or elections or anything like that. But nobody else is reaching out either. This tariff thing has been a complete and utter disaster for Donald Trump. Sent the markets up, down, mostly down, sideways. People have talked about laying people off. It's a disaster. And they have made 0 deals in 2 weeks, which means no one is moving and Trump is losing.
Donald Trump is going to lose it when he sees that China outmaneuvered him again in his own trade war, this time with Vietnam. Now, Donald Trump has been touting Vietnam as one of the first countries that was willing to come to the table to renegotiate its tariffs and to create a new trade deal. But China swooped in over the weekend and got to Vietnam first, signing over a dozen new trade deals that include supply chain cooperation and railway cooperation. And this is not the first time China has done this. China also canceled a gas contract with the United States and went to Australia. There's been soybeans that they've gone to South America for. They've got a meeting coming up with the EU to discuss tariffs on electric vehicles. Donald Trump has turned the entire world against us and is being outmaneuvered every day in his own trade war because he has no plan. His only plan was to get the countries to come to him, say they're sorry, and beg for a new trade deal. He thought he had one with Vietnam, but now that's gone. At least he wasn't there first. They may still come, but the countries aren't lining up the way they thought. They're only turning their backs.
All this time, he was never talking to you.
We're making a fortune with tariffs, $2 billion a day. Do you believe it? I was told $2 billion a day.
He said that yesterday at a dinner. And then today we find out a video leaks from the White House and he says,
He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. He's a financial.
because this whole time, he was never talking to you. At his rallies, he'd always say, you're going to have so much money, you won't know what to do with it. But he wasn't talking to you. That $2 billion isn't even going into the government. It's going into one man's pocket. He was never talking to you. How does that feel? Like you were having a conversation with somebody and come to find out the entire time they were talking to the person standing behind you, not actually you. He was literally looking into a camera because he was talking to the billionaires that he was going to make richer. And now he has these billionaires in his office bragging about how he made them richer off of your pain and suffering. You can't feed your kids? Who cares? They're richer. You can't send your kids to school? Who cares? They're richer. Your lights can't stay on? Who cares? They're richer. They don't care. He's literally bragging about making $2 billion in one day because of these tariffs, but then has made it very clear that these tariffs and this cycle up and down is never going to end because he's constantly making money.
Breaking news, Trump just caved to China and lifted 40% of the tariffs he imposed on China yesterday. Trump apparently freaking out that he put a tariff on American citizens buying phones, smartphones, computers, etc., has just turned around and lifted the tariffs. So no longer do Trump's tariffs on China, again, that he announced yesterday, no longer do they apply to any smartphones or computers or anything else. That's 40% of our trade with China. Really kind of pathetic. What this shows, first of all, is Trump is now admitting that his tariffs are putting a tax on American consumers. All this time, Trump was claiming that his tariffs were putting a tax on the Chinese and the Europeans, and they were the ones that were going to pay. This morning, he admitted it's you and me who are paying. We're the ones who pay for the tariffs, American consumers, and that's why he chickened out 24 hours after he put them into place. Don't think the Chinese aren't watching this and laughing. At the same time, the Europeans announced that they're going to be having a summit with the Chinese in a few months. Macron from France is going as well. This is something I predicted, that the Europeans are going to be sucking up to China, that we pushed the Europeans into China's lap economically, but possibly even militarily, all because Trump decided to alienate them on defense, on NATO, on Russia, on Ukraine, but also on economic policy. Really kind of pathetic. Art of the deal? Yeah, I don't think so. The man caved in 24 hours to China, the big bad.
Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs have everyone from conservative Republicans to Wall Street billionaires to even rural farmers saying, what in the world is that guy doing? And we're seeing that sentiment very clearly in the polls, too. I mean, in a new CBS YouGov poll that was released just yesterday, a majority of Americans said the economy is getting worse. And a growing number of Americans say Trump's policies are making them financially worse off. You can see the chart on the screen right now, and you can see it shows a 7-point jump on that question from just last month. The majority of Americans are also against Trump's tariff and trade policy. But the news gets even worse for Trump. Get a load of this. When the people in this poll were asked who would benefit most from Trump's tariffs, 3/4 of Americans said the wealthy, and 71% said large corporations. I think everybody knows how popular the wealthy and large corporations are. Not very popular at all. Just imagine how well it's going to sit with the majority of Americans when Congress returns in May, just in a couple weeks, and focuses all their time on cutting taxes for the wealthy and large corporations, which is what they're going to do.
The thing about reserve currencies is part of what makes them safe is that everyone else thinks they're safe. You have, I think, a financial crisis in transition, and then you end up in a not a world where you can't park your assets anywhere, but a less secure and stable one.
Henry, for all of the upheaval of the past couple of weeks, the on-again, off-again tariffs and so on, that's not the only thing that's troubled you in this time.
No, the tariffs aren't the only thing. It's also the financial market reaction, which seems to be beyond a stock market sell-off. It looks like a generalized turn away from American assets by investors, which could, perhaps if it continues and gets worse, result in a threat to the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency, which is the status on which the global financial system is built and on which a lot of the global economy relies.
What's happening now that's giving you that fear?
Since President Trump announced the so-called reciprocal tariffs at the start of April, there have been big falls in equity markets. Everyone knows about that. The more alarming signal that's happened is this simultaneous sell-off in bonds and in the dollar. So normally what happens when bond yields go up is that the dollar goes up too, because investors can get more by buying the dollar and holding those bonds. When your bond yields go up but the dollar goes down, it means that there's this generalized sell-off, a flight from those assets, which suggests investors are somewhat fearful. It's the kind of dynamic you see more in emerging markets. It's the kind of dynamic you saw in Britain after the disastrous mini-budget under Liz Truss's premiership. And that's what's sending this signal that maybe there's this risk premium now on US assets. And it's that's worrying.
What the hell is she talking about? I mean, does she not know that China and Japan and other nations are creating their own little economic axes without the U.S. right now? Explain to me, Basil, if you can, this notion that somehow this art of the deal is working.
There's no evidence that it's working. You can't govern with stream of consciousness engagement. That doesn't work. You know, and I heard Bill Clinton say this a number of years ago, that the United States is 4 to 5% of the world's population. So we have to play nice with our partners around the globe. And as you said, and we talked about this before, what China has been doing internationally has been, you know, when you look at it, you know, building ports in places in Africa and in the Caribbean, they've expanded their economy significantly. So this sort of protectionist approach that the president is thinking or trying to promote that he has, I definitely think, you know, hurts American workers. And let's be clear. And you're right in the ways that you talked about this at the top. that these exceptions that he's made for these big companies, yes, it may make your iPhone a little cheaper, but the reality is that there are a lot of other products that come into this country from China, for example. So you may get a cheaper phone from Apple or some other company, but when you go to the Dollar Tree store, you know, in your neighborhood, all of these other areas, Walmart, the Walmarts of the world, Walmarts that are some of the biggest employers in some communities, when you go to those stores, all of those products are going to be more expensive.
Yep.
And there's a little irony here, just very quickly. The CEO of BlackRock was at the Economic Club at New York and indicated that a lot of the companies he's engaged with are talking recession. It was at that same Economic Club of New York, if you remember during the campaign, that Trump had that incoherent answer about the cost of childcare. So any business leader that ever heard him talk about the economy and his plan could tell you a mile away that he didn't know what he was talking about and that there really was no plan. So this shouldn't really come as a surprise to them, but clearly it's going to be a surprise to a lot of people who supported it.
There was no plan, Tara. This was all totally foreseeable. Anyone who actually would have walked through these numbers, walked through what manufacturing looks like in the United States, the degree to which we rely on things that are manufactured in China, could have anticipated this. And yet what it actually took were stocks plunging. I want to read you this from CNBC. In the days since Trump's tariff announcement, Apple lost over $640 billion. Billion with a B in market value. CNBC previously reported the cost of an iPhone under Trump's tariff plan could have ballooned to as high as $3,500 under some estimates. Again, Tara, you and I have been in the rooms where these decisions are made. Someone would ordinarily put those numbers in front of you and say, are you willing to take this risk? He had to send the market into a spiral in order to understand this.
China's pissed. Tariff them again. China just canceled $2 billion in U.S. beef and chicken orders. Tariff them again. They just suspended all rare earth mineral exports to the U.S. Ooh, tariff them again. They're threatening to dump $76 billion in U.S. debt. Better not. Tariff them again. Good news? No. China just exposed the entire luxury goods market as a giant scam. Whoops. That Rolex you're wearing? Worthless. No. Yeah, and China's also speaking directly to Americans, saying, all your brands have been Donald Trumping you. That's nice. Rise up, bitches. It's time for a revolution. Rise the fuck up. No! And shop directly with us. Or maybe war. Tariff him again.
At the end of the day, I wish somebody could reach the president and get him to stop, because enough is enough. We cannot continue to have our economy in Massachusetts and around this country held hostage. We cannot continue to gamble with people's livelihoods. There really is no excuse for this chaos, where right now, as we speak, families are not able to budget, businesses aren't able to budget, businesses aren't able to invest, workers can't plan their retirements. We need a president who is focused on lowering costs and growing the economy, and everything that Donald Trump has been doing to date is just the exact opposite of that.